Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Blessed from the fully enlightened one. Buddham Dhammam Sangam Namasami. Hello and good evening, everyone. We'll start the session by reading the Dhammapada verses and stories. Actually, we have been reading these stories on the Sunday mornings with our Indian group. So I thought this was a very learning thing that we were doing. I thought we could also read a few stories from there. This is from actually in the circular, it was given as Dandavaka, but actually this is from Papavagga. The number is right. This is Papavagga. So for the first one, we'll start reading verse number 116 and its story. Nanda madam, would you like to read?
Dhammapada verse 116, Kulakasata Vatu. Verse 116, one should make haste in doing good deeds. One should restrain one's mind from evil. For the mind of one who is slow in doing good tends to take delight in doing evil. The story of Kulakasataka. While residing at the Jetavana monastery, the Buddha uttered verse 116 of this book with reference to a Brahmin couple by the name of Kulakasataka. There was once a Brahmin couple in Savatthi who had only one outer garment between the two of them. Because of this, they were also known as Ekasataka. As they had only one outer garment, both of them could not go out at the same time. So the wife would go to listen to the discourse given by the Buddha during the day, and the husband would go at night. One night, as the Brahmin listened to the Buddha, his whole body came to be suffused with delightful satisfaction, and he felt a strong desire to offer the outer garment he was wearing to the Buddha. But he realized that if he were to give away the only outer garment he had, there would be none left of him and his wife. So he wavered and hesitated. Thus the first and the second watches of the night passed. Came the third watch, and he said to himself, if I'm so miserly and hesitant, I will not be able to avoid falling to the four lower worlds, payas. I shall now offer my outer garment to the Buddha. So saying, he placed the piece of cloth at the feet of the Buddha and cried out, I have won 3 times. King Pasadi of Kusala, who was among the audience, heard those words and ordered a courtier to investigate. Learning about the Brahmin's offering to the Buddha, the king commented that the Brahmin had done something which was not easy to do and so should be rewarded. The king ordered his men to give the Brahmin a piece of cloth as a reward for his faith and generosity. The Brahmin offered that piece of cloth also to the Buddha, and he was rewarded by the king with 2 pieces of cloth. Again, the Brahmin offered the 2 pieces of cloth to the Buddha, and he was rewarded with 4. Thus he offered to the Buddha whatever was given him by the king, and each time the king doubled his reward. When finally the reward came up to 32 pieces of cloth, the Brahmin kept 1 piece for himself and another for his wife, and offered the remaining 30 pieces to the Buddha. Then, thinking again, commented that the Brahmin had truly performed a very difficult task, and so must be rewarded fittingly. The king sent a messenger to the palace to bring 2 pieces of velvet cloth, each of which was worth 100,000, and gave them to the Brahmin. The Brahmin made those 2 pieces of valuable cloth into 2 canopies, and kept one in the perfumed chamber where the Buddha slept, and the other in his own house above the place where a bhikkhu was regularly offered alms food. When the king next went to Jetavana monastery to pay homage to the Buddha, he saw the velvet canopy and recognized it as the offering made by the Brahmin, and he was very pleased. This time he made a reward of 7 kinds of fours, sabakatuka, viz. 4 elephants, 4 horses, 4 female slaves, 4 male slaves, 4 errand boys, 4 villages, and 4,000 in cash. When the bhikkhus heard about this, they asked the Buddha, how is it that, in the case of this Brahmin, a good deed done at present bears fruit immediately? To them the Buddha replied, if the Brahmin had offered his outer garment in the first watch of the night, he would have been rewarded with 16 of each kind. If he had made his offering during the middle watch, he would have been rewarded with 8 of each kind. Since he had made his offering only during the last watch of the night, he was rewarded with only 4 of each kind. So when one wants to give in charity, one should do so quickly. If one procrastinates, the reward comes slowly and only sparingly. Also, if one is too slow in doing good deeds, one may not be able to do it at all, for the mind tends to take delight in doing evil. Then the Buddha spoke in verse as follows. Verse 116. One should make haste in doing good deeds. One should refrain one's mind from evil, for the mind of one who is slow in doing good tends to take delight in doing evil.
Great. Great. Thank you, Nanda ma'am. Actually, I think these stories are very simple, so I will not again make the story, put it into my words. The thing that we can take is do the good things as early as the thought arises and refrain from doing bad. And if we are taking time to do the good deeds, then our mind starts to take delight in then our mind starts to take delight in the evil. So we need to do good actions or anything that comes as part of generosity. We should act upon it immediately. Actually, there are a lot of verses related to the actions that we are going to do and how quickly we have to do. All these are given in these verses. I will read this verse. Verse 117. If a man does evil, he should not do it again and again. He should not take delight in it. The accumulation of evil leads to dukkha. The story of Tera Seyasakha. While residing at the Jetavana monastery, the Buddha uttered verse 117 of this book with reference to Tera Seyasakha. Once there was a Tera by the name of Seyasakha who was in the habit of masturbating. When the Buddha heard about this, he rebuked the Tera for doing something that would lead one farther away from the attainment of Magga and Phala. At the same time, the Buddha laid down the discipline prohibiting such indulgence in sexual pleasures, that is, samghadese sa apati, offenses which require penance and suspension from the order. Then the Buddha added, this kind of offense can only lead to evil results in this world as well as in the next. Then the Buddha spoke in verse as follows. If a man does evil, he should not do it again and again. He should not take delight in it. The accumulation of evil leads to dukkha. So if there is a mistake, rather than repeating any of the same mistake, we have to let it go and understand that if we keep repeating it, our mind starts to take delight in it. So you have to stop doing anything that is evil and come out of dukkha. Nanda madam, can you read this one? Or Paul? Nanda madam.
Verse 118. If a man does what is good, he should do it again and again. He should take delight in it. The accumulation of merit leads to happiness. The story of Lajadeva Dita. While residing at the Jetavana monastery, the Buddha uttered verse 118 of this book with reference to Laja, a female deva. At one time, Thera Mahakassapa stayed in the Pipali cave and remained in sustained absorption in concentration samadhi for 7 days. Soon after he had arisen from Samapati, wishing to give someone a chance of offering something to a Thera just arisen from Samapati, he took out and found a young maid frying corn in a field hut. So he stood at her door for alms food, and she put all the popcorn into the bowl of the Thera. As she turned back after offering popcorn to the Thera, she was bitten by a poisonous snake and died. She was reborn in Tavitimasa Deva world and was known as Laja Popcorn Devadita. Laja realized that she was reborn in Tavitimsa because she had offered popcorn to Thera Mahakasapa and felt very grateful to him. Then she concluded that she should keep on doing some services to the Thera in order to make her good fortune more enduring. So every morning she went to the monastery of the Thera, swept the premises, filled up water pots, and did other services. At first, the Thera thought that young Samanera had done those services, but one day he found out that a female deva had been performing those services. So he told her not to come to the monastery anymore, as people might start talking if she kept on coming to the monastery. Rajadeva Dita was very upset. She pleaded with the Thera and cried, "Please do not destroy my riches, my wealth." The Buddha heard her cries and sent forth the radiance from his chamber and said to the female Deva, "Devadita, it is the duty of my son Kasapa to stop your coming to the monastery. To do good deeds is the duty of one who is anxious to gain merit." Then the Buddha spoke in verse as follows, verse 118. If a man does what is good, he should do it again and again. He should take delight in it. The accumulation of merit leads to happiness. At the end of the discourse, Lala Devidita attained Sotapati fruition.
That is a great instance where the Buddha has given this verse. We have to keep doing good actions. And by doing it, by doing it repeatedly, our mind starts taking delight. It wants to do that good action again and again. And then with that, we start gaining merits, and this leads to happiness. I will read this. Even an evil person may still find happiness so long as his evil deeds does not bear fruit. But when his evil deed does bear fruit, he will meet with evil consequences. Even a good person may still meet with suffering so long as his good deeds does not bear fruit. But when it does bear fruit, he will enjoy the benefits of his good deeds. The story of Anantapindika. While residing at the Jetavana monastery, the Buddha uttered verses 119 and 120 of this book with reference to Anantapindika, the famous rich man of Savatthi. Anantapindika was the donor of the Jetavana monastery, which was built at a cost of 54 crores. He was not only generous but also truly devoted to the Buddha. He would go to the Jetavana monastery and pay homage to the Buddha thrice daily. In the morning, he would bring along rice gruel. In the daytime, some suitable rich food or medicine, and in the evening, some flowers and incense. After some time, Anantapindika became poor. But being a Sotapanna, he was not shaken by misfortune. and he continued to do his daily acts of charity. One night, the spirit guarding the gate to the house of Anantapindika appeared to him in person and said, I am the guardian of your gate. You have been offering your property to Samana Gautama with no thoughts of your future. That is why you are now a poor man. Therefore, you should make no more offerings to Samana Gautama and should look after your own business affairs and get rich again. Anantapindika drove the guardian spirit out of his house for saying such things. And as Anantapindika was a Sotapanna, the guardian spirit could not disobey him and so had to leave the premises. He had no way to go and wanted to return, but was afraid of Anantapindika. So he approached Saka, king of the Devas. Saka advised him first to do a good turn to Anantapindika and after that to ask his pardon. Then Sakka continued, there are about 18 crores taken as loan by some traders which are not yet repaid to Anantapindika. Another 18 crores buried by the ancestors of Anantapindika, which have been washed away into the ocean, and another 18 crores which belong to no one, buried in a certain place. Go and recover all these wealth by your supernatural power and fill up the rooms of Anantapindika. Having done so, you may ask his pardon. You may ask his pardon. The guardian spirit did as instructed by Sakka, and Anantapindika again became rich. When the guardian spirit told Anantapindika about the information and instructions given by Sakka about the recovery of his richness from underneath the earth, from within the ocean, and from the debtors, he was struck with awe. Then Anantapindika took the guardian spirit to the Buddha. To both of them, the Buddha said, one may not enjoy the benefits of good deeds or suffer the consequences of a bad deed for a long time. But time will surely come when his good or bad deeds will bear fruit and ripen. Then the Buddha spoke in verse as follows. Even an evil person may still find happiness so long as his evil deeds does not bear fruit. But when his evil deed does bear fruit, he will meet with evil consequences. Even a good person may still meet with suffering as long as his good deeds does not bear fruit. But when it does bear fruit, he will enjoy the benefits of his good deed. At the end of the discourse, the guardian spirit of the gate of Anantapindika's house attained Sotapatti fruition. The action and consequences, what kind of seed we are sowing, it will bear fruit. So we have to be careful which kind of action we are doing. Nanda madam?
Verse 121. One should not think lightly of doing evil, imagining a little will not affect me. Just as a water jar is filled up by falling drops of rain, so also the fool is filled up with evil by accumulating it little by little. The story of a careless bhikkhu. While residing at the Jetavana monastery, the Buddha uttered verse 121 of this book with reference to a bhikkhu who was careless in the use of furniture belonging to the monastery. This bhikkhu, after using any piece of furniture such as a couch, a bench, or a stool belonging to the monastery, would leave it outside in the compound, thus exposing it to rain and sun and also to white ants. When other bhikkhus chided him for his irresponsible behavior, he would retorted, I do not have the intention to destroy those things. After all, very little damage has been done, and so on and so forth. And he continued to behave in the same way. When the Buddha came to know about this, he sent for the bhikkhu and said to him, Bhikkhu, you should not behave in this way. You should not think lightly of an evil, however small it may be, because it will become big if you do it habitually. Then the Buddha spoke in verse as follows. Verse 121. One should not think lightly of doing evil, imagining a little will not affect me, just as a water jar is filled up by falling drops of rain, so also the fool is filled up with evil by accumulating it little by little.
Actually, these verses of Dhammapada has been inspiring very much to be on the path. Really, Dhammapada is also very much learning, and we can practically apply it. The stories really reflect back. Verse 122. One should not think lightly of doing good, imagining a little will not affect me, just as a water jar is filled up by falling drops of rain. So also the wise one is filled up with merit by accumulating it little by little. The story of Bilala Pattaka. While residing at the Jetavana monastery, the Buddha uttered verse 122 of this book with reference to Bilala Pattaka, a rich man. Once a man from Savatthi, having heard a discourse given by the Buddha, was very much impressed and decided to practice what was taught by the Buddha. The exhortation was to give in charity, not only by oneself, but also to get others to do so, and that by so doing, one would gain much merit and have a large number of followers in the next existence. So that man invited the Buddha and all the resident bhikkhus in the Jetavana monastery for alms food the next day. Then he went round to each one of the houses and informed the residents that alms food would he offered the next day to the Buddha and the other bhikkhus, and so to contribute according to their wishes. The rich man, Bilalapataka, seeing the man going round from house to house, of his behavior and felt a strong dislike for him and murmured to himself, "Oh, this wretched man! Why did he not invite as many bhikkhus as he could himself offer alms, instead of going round coaxing people?" So he asked the man to bring his bowl, and into his bowl he put only a little rice, only a little butter, only a little molasses. These were taken away separately and not mixed with what others has given. The rich man could not understand why this thing were kept separately, and he thought perhaps that man wanted others to know that a rich man like him had contributed very little, and so put him to shame. Therefore, he sent a servant to find out. A promoter of charity put a little of everything that was given by the rich man into various pots of rice and curry and sweetmeats, so that the rich man may gain much merit. His servant reported that uh, he had seen, but Bilalapattaka did not get the meaning and was not sure of the intention of the promoter of charity. However, the next day he went to the place where alms food was being offered. At the same time, he took a knife with him, intending to kill the chief promoter of charity if he were to reveal in public just how little a rich man like him had contributed. But this promoter of charity said to the Buddha, "Venerable Sir, this charity is a joint offering of all. Whether one has given much or little is of no account. Each one of us has given in faith and generosity. So may all of us gain equal merit." When he heard those words, Bilalapattaka realized that he had wronged the man and pondered that if he were not to own up his mistake and ask the promoter of charity to pardon him, he would be reborn in one of the four lower worlds, apayas. So he said, "My friend, I have done you a great wrong by thinking ill of you. Please forgive me." The Buddha heard the rich man asking for pardon and on inquiry found out the reason. So the Buddha said, "My disciple, you should not think lightly of a good deed, however small it may be, for small deeds will become big if you do them habitually." Then the Buddha spoke in verse as follows: "One should not think lightly of doing good, imagining, a little will not affect me, just as a water jar is filled up by falling drops of rain. So also the wise one is filled up with merit by accumulating it little by little." At the end of the discourse, Bilalapataka, the rich man, attained Sotapatti fruition. That's the opposite of that one, the one that we have just read previously. Doing little good, thinking only doing little good is not enough, and not doing it is very bad. So even if it's little, keep doing. Nanda, madam.
Verse 123. Just as a wealthy merchant with few attendants avoids a dangerous road, just as one who desires to go on living avoids poison, so also one should avoid evil. The story of Mahadana. While residing at the Jetavana monastery, the Buddha uttered verse 1, 2, 3 of this book with reference to Mahadana the merchant. Mahadana was a rich merchant from Savatthi. On one occasion, 500 robbers were planning to rob him, but they did not get the chance to rob him. In the meantime, they heard that the merchant would soon be going out with 500 carts loaded with valuable merchandise. The merchant Mahadana also invited the bhikkhus who would like to go on the same journey to accompany him, and he promised to look to their needs on the way. So 500 bhikkhus accompanied him. The robbers got news of the trip and went ahead to lie in wait for the caravan of the merchant. But the merchant stopped at the outskirts of the forest where the robbers were waiting. The caravan was to move on after camping there for a few days. The robbers got the news of the impending departure and made ready to loot the caravan. The merchant in his turn also got news of the movements of the bandits, and he decided to return home. The bandits now heard that the merchant would go home, so they waited on the homeward way. Some villagers sent words to the merchant about the movements of the bandits, and the merchant finally decided to remain in the village for some time. When he told the bhikkhus about this decision, the bhikkhus returned to Savatthi by themselves. On arriving at the Jetavana monastery, they went to the Buddha and informed him about the cancellation of their trip. To them, the Buddha said, Bhikkhus, Mahadana keeps away from the journey beset with bandits. One who does not want to die keeps away from poison. So also a wise bhikkhu, realizing that the three levels of existence are like a journey beset with danger, should strive to keep away from doing evil. Then the Buddha spoke in verse as follows. Verse 1, 2, 3. Just as a wealthy merchant with few attendants avoids a dangerous road, just as one who desires to go on living avoids poison, so also one should avoid evil. At the end of the discourse, those 500 bhikkhus attained Sotapatti fruition. These three levels of existence are Kamabhava, the level of sensuous existence comprising the 11 realms of sense desire. Rupabhava, the level of 5 material existence comprising 16 of the realms of Brahmas. Arupabhava, the level of non-material existence comprising 4 realms of the upper Brahmas.
Thank you, Nanda, madam. Actually, these stories are very inspiring, and we get to learn even in our practical life, even in this generation. We could see how people cancel their trips and what we can learn from that. I think one should avoid doing evil, thinking that even if we are reborn in higher realms, even there, if we do little evil, we will come back to this birth and death cycle. We'll be in this samsara. So we have to completely let go of this suffering. Verse 124. If there is no wound on the hand, one may handle poison. Poison does not affect one who has no wound. There can be no evil for one who has no evil intention. The story of Kukutta, while residing at the Veluvana monastery, the Buddha uttered verse 124 of this book with reference to the hunter Kukutta and his family. At Rajagaha, there was once a rich man's daughter who had attained Sotapati fruition as a young girl. One day, Kukutta, a hunter, came into town in a cart to sell venison. Seeing Kukutta, the hunter, the rich young lady fell in love with him immediately. She followed him, married him, and lived with him in a small village. As a result of that marriage, 7 sons were born to them, and in course of time, all the sons got married. One day, the Buddha surveyed the world early in the morning with his supernormal power and found that the hunter, his 7 sons, and their wives are due for attainment of the Sotapati fruition. So the Buddha went to the place where the hunter had set his trap in the forest. He put his footprint close to the trap and seated himself under the shade of a bush, not far from the trap. When the hunter came, he saw no animal in the trap. He saw the footprint and surmised that someone must have come before him and let cut the animal. So when he saw the Buddha under the shade of the bush, he took him for the man who had freed the animal from his trap and flew into a rage. He took out his bow and arrow to shoot the Buddha, but as he drew his bow, he became immobilized and remained fixed in that position like a statue. His sons followed and found their father. They also saw the Buddha at some distance and thought he must be the enemy of their father. All of them took out their bows and arrows to shoot the Buddha, but they also became immobilized and remained fixed in their respective postures. When the hunter and his sons failed to return, the hunter's wife followed them into the forest with their 7 daughters-in-law. Seeing her husband and all her sons with their arrows aimed at the Buddha, she raised both her hands and shouted, "Do not kill my father." When her husband heard her words, he thought, "This must be my father-in-law." And her sons thought, "This must be our grandfather." And thoughts of loving kindness came into them. Then the lady said to them, "Put away your bows and arrows and pay respects to my father." The Buddha realized that by this time the minds of the hunters and his sons had softened, and so he willed that they should be able to move and to put away their bows and arrows. After putting away their bows and arrows, they paid obeisance to the Buddha, and the Buddha expounded the Dhamma to them. In the end, the hunter, his 7 sons, and 7 daughters-in-law, all 15 of them attained Sutapati fruition. Then the Buddha returned to the monastery and told Tera Ananda and other bhikkhus about the hunter Kukutamita and his family attaining Sutapati fruition in the early part of the morning. The bhikkhus then asked the Buddha, Venerable Sir, is the wife of the hunter who is a Sutapanna also not guilty of taking life? If she has been getting things like nets, bows, and arrows for her husband, who has when he goes out hunting? To this question, the Buddha answered, because the Sotapannas do not kill, they do not wish others to get killed. The wife of the hunter was only obeying her husband in getting things for him, just as the hand that has no wound is not affected by poison. So also, because she has no intention to do evil, she is not doing any evil. Then the Buddha spoke in verse as follows. If there is no wound on the hand, one may handle poison. Poison does not affect one who has no wound. There can be no evil for one who has no evil intention. That's a good reading. Shall we continue, or maybe I'll pause here and do the remaining 4 verses later? I'll stop my screen sharing. Maybe we can all meditate for 10 minutes and then share minutes. 10 minutes meditation is finished. When you're ready, you can open your eyes. Yes, Nanda madam, how do you think today's reading was?
Great. It really emphasized the importance of doing good, even the slightest merit that we can accumulate, and keep on repeating that, and how powerful the karma is, the negative actions has quite a detrimental effect on our lives. So therefore, how important it is to focus on wholesome states. And I was thinking how grateful we are for Bhante Vimala Ramsey, who introduced the 6 R's, and 6 R's most certainly weaken our unwholesome states and strengthen the wholesome states, because we are focusing on radiating unconditional universal kindness. It is to me, it is a very powerful feeling, which actually transforms the personality and character and the behavior and actions in our daily life. Thank you very much, Sindhu, for choosing this. It's enormously beneficial. Thank you.
And Paul also messaged, thank you, was forgotten how good the Dhammapada is. Yes, Dhammapada is very strong. It actually is easy to understand for lay people who does not have understanding of the suktas. Obviously, these also come into Sukta Pitika, but these are like a verses and short and go to the teaching. And lots of people have, lots of monks have also been inspired through Dhammapada. So I thought of choosing that one. We'll share the minute. Be suffering once, be suffering free, and fear stuck, fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit that we have thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space, devas, and nagas, mighty, share this merit of ours. May they long protect the past dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Nanda Madam. Thank you, Paul. And wishing you all happiness.